4 more teams remain to talk about. These are the 4 returning teams from last year. Let's waste no time and dive right into them. We begin with the Birmingham Stallions being head coached by AJ McCarron this year. For the first time since the Stallions returned, they aren't entering the season as a reigning champion. They lose most of their quarterback room from last season, but the piece they retained has been with the Stallions for the past 2 seasons in Matt Corral. He's been a surefire bet for them the past few years, gonna be a week 1 starter for sure, as he has played well with the Stallions, and I'm excited to see him continue his UFL career. The running back room gets a complete overhaul as all 3 guys that they had last year are now elsewhere. They bring in Anthony McFarland, who was with San Antonio last year. They bring in Snoop Connor, former 3rd-round pick Tyrion Davis-Price is on the team, as well as Nate Noel. I expect McFarland to be the main back of this unit with the other guys playing support, but we'll see how the offseason and the season progresses. The pass catchers also get a bit of a shakeup with Jay Sternenberger retiring and 4 receivers parting ways. They do retain Deion Kane and Marlon Williams, who were some really nice players for them last season. They bring in UFL veterans in Dawood Davis and Marcus Sims to pair with former NFL guys Laviska Shenault, John Ross, and Justin Ross. O-line gets shifted around a bit, with the biggest new acquisition being former 2nd-round pick Jackson Carman. He had stints with the Bengals and the Dolphins. He's going to be getting real starting reps for the Stallions, and I'm interested to see how he plays because his time with Miami wasn't bad, but it also wasn't spectacular either, thus why he is here. The defense retained a ton of key pieces from last year, including Tay Crowder, Stephen Gilmore, Mario Goodrich, JoJo Tillery, and Trey Norwood. The one piece they couldn't retain, though, was Perion Winfrey. He spent the fall with the Dallas Cowboys, but he has since been released, so a reunion is on the table. Another name that left for the NFL is kicker Harrison Mevis. Those shoes are going to be filled by Jonathan Garibay, who last kicked in 2024 with the Dallas Renegades. He was a 93% kicker through 7 games, so someone you could probably rely on. This is a pretty big year for the Stallions. A lot is riding on this, seemingly. There's talks about them potentially being relocated. They were apparently an option to be relocated this past summer. So they're really going to need a good season, and they're going to need fans to show up if they're going to keep this team another season. Hopefully they'll be able to. The league is better with the Stallions, but we shall see. Up next, the Dallas Renegades, or the Arlington Renegades last year. They're going to be head coached by Rick Neuheisel this year. The big point of emphasis for the Renegades is that the Spring King Luis Perez returns for the Renegades. After some discussions during the last season about his future, he decides he has one more in him. Some of his weapons are returning as well. Tyler Vaughns and Deontay Burnett being back in the receiver room. Running back Day Hunter returns, as does tight end Seth Green. Unfortunately, his favorite weapon, tight end Sal Cannella, does not return as he signed on with the Cleveland Browns last fall. New weapons do include former Houston Roughneck Emmanuel Butler, Denzel Mims, who was a former NFL receiver and spent last season with the St. Louis Battlehawks, running back Lorenzo Lingard, who spent last season with the Houston Roughnecks, tight ends Peyton Hendershot and Baylor Cupp as well. Hendershot previously spent time with the Chiefs and Cowboys, while Baylor Cupp spent time with the Chiefs and Ravens. The defense was able to return a ton of key pieces, with the most notable being linebacker Donald Payne, edge rushers Willie Taylor and Taco Charlton, corner Ajeen Harris, who is a multi-time All-UFL corner, and safety Miles Dorn. The biggest defensive acquisition is safety Quinterio Cole. He spent the past few seasons with the St. Louis Battlehawks, was a very key piece to a defense that went to back-to-back conference championships. And this is paired with new specialists, as Lucas Havrisik went on with the Packers and Marquette King retired, so the new guys are Colton Thieker and Brendan Hall to be the kicker and punter respectively. This is a Renegades team that is a few years removed from winning the XFL championship not too long ago. They're going to look back to get to form. They still have a lot of the key pieces there, so they still definitely are able to. It's just how are they going to go out there and show up on the field? They had a pretty solid year last year after a rough 2024. So we shall see. Up next, it is the DC Defenders. The defending champs, they sport a pretty similar roster from what they had last year. The main thing being they're the only team to have the exact same coaching staff as what they had a year prior. Shannon Harris was the interim head coach last year, and due to winning a UFL championship, he is now the full-time head coach in DC. They also returned UFL championship game MVP Jordan Teamu, who played incredible last year, leading DC to that championship win. They returned 2 key running backs in Deion Jackson and Abram Smith. They also returned receivers Ty Scott, Cornell Power, Kiki Chisholm, as well as tight ends Mason Fairchild and Ben Bresnahan. Eric Enzukanma, who spent the past few seasons with Miami and Jacksonville, is paired with Montrell Washington as two new additions to the receiver room. I do expect at least Enzukanma to have some kind of impact with this team. He played pretty well for Miami during his preseason tenure here with the team. Just someone that was never healthy enough to see proper playing time. Another former Miami Dolphin that finds their way to DC is guard Solomon Kinley, who was a legit starter for Miami back in 2020 and played well in that role. Defensively, they do lose Malik Fisher, Anthony Hines, and Kelvin Joseph over the offseason, but two names that catch the eye in terms of guys they brought in is Leon O'Neal and Bryce Thompson. O'Neal spent last season with Houston and played pretty well. Same with Bryce Thompson during his time in San Antonio the last few seasons. Another key thing with some of the rule changes in the UFL is the importance of kicker, and they brought back their two main specialists, Matt McCrane back as kicker and Paxton Brooks back as punter. DC is very capable of going on to repeat. We shall see if they can actually capitalize off of it though. Part of it felt like they caught lightning in a bottle with the way they won some games last year, but at the same time, this is a really damn good roster that won the championship, so you never truly know. And lastly, the St. Louis Battlehawks, being head coached now by former Battlehawk receiver coach Ricky Prohl. A team that has struggled getting over the hump the past few seasons, the Battlehawks are shaking a few things up. Ben Woldridge is the new man in the quarterback room, going to be able to compete with returning Brandon Silvers for the QB1 spot. Running back Jacob Saylor signed with the Detroit Lions back in the fall, so the returning Jarvion Howard and Kevon Latulis are going to be picking up the work, and they are fully capable of doing so. They also returned the bulk of their receiver room. Hakeem Butler, Jacquard Pearson, Blake Jackson, and Frank Darby all return. The tight end room, however, gets a complete new look with the main guy Jake Sutherland departing and Tyler Neville and Shane Calhoun being brought into the fold. Your D-line remains the same with Pita Tamupenu and Travis Feeney returning, paired with newcomers Neil Farrell, who was a former 4th-round pick out of LSU back in 2022, and Carlos Davis, who spent time with the Birmingham Stallions the past few years. The secondary gets a new look with multiple pieces leaving. Pretty much every key piece of their secondary last year is now either on a different UFL team or signed to the NFL, as is the case with Nick Whiteside. To step into those roles, you have AJ Thomas, who spent time with the Stallions, being named All UFL Corner in 2024, and you have Nate Brooks, who spent time with the Michigan Panthers and was named All UFL Corner in 2024, and spent time with the Cincinnati Bengals in 2024 and 2025. New kicker and punter as well for the Battlehawks. This leaves them with some high expectations and some pressure as well. This might be the last season they play at the Dome at America's Center. There's been some rumors and discussions about moving them into an MLS stadium, as 6 of the other 7 teams play in one as well, and just the cost of rent for that stadium is a bit high, but the Battlehawks belong at the Dome, and I would imagine they're able to stay there, especially if that Dome keeps on filling as it is to be expected to. So that wraps up the team coverages. The first game is next week, March 27th. I will be live with pretty much every single UFL game, so stick around, I'd greatly appreciate it. Power rankings and predictions for week 1 is next week. I'll see you all there. Have yourselves a damn good one. Peace.